Watching.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishnayos Eruvin, Perek Gimel, Chapter 3, Mishnah Beis, Mishnah 2. Continuing a discussion about Eruvei Tchumen, where a person wants to be able to go beyond the 2,000 cubit limit on Shabbos. We say that before Shabbos, he goes up to the point of 2,000 cubits and puts food down there to establish his residence for Shabbos there, halachically. Now, and then from that point, he can go 2,000 cubits further from there in all four directions. Or he can go 2,000 cubits from there in all four directions, which would give him an extra 2,000 cubits from his house. Now, so now the Mishnah says, the previous Mishnah spoke about, what kind of, the food that we use for the Erev Tchumen. There was a discussion whether, is it enough for it to be food or edible for anyone? Does it have to be edible for you? Where is it? Is it accessible? So our Mishnah is going to be continuing with that discussion about a list of foods that could or cannot be used. And again, it's following the opinion that as long as someone can eat it, therefore it is considered food for your Erev Tchumen. So the Mishnah says like this: Ma'arvin b'damai. You can make your Erev Tchumen with damai. Damai, we've learned, is grain brought from an Amaretz, from an ignorant person. There was a concern that perhaps he didn't take off Maisris, didn't take the tithings, and therefore, even though most of them did, the Chachamim obligated any person who buys from an Amaretz to tithe, which means you can't eat it until you tithe it. Nonetheless, the Mishnah says that you can make the Erev Tchumen with your damai because there are people who can eat damai, and those are the poor people. The Chachamim, when they made their law about damai, made an exception to poor people. Poor people can buy grain from an Amaretz, and they don't have to tithe it in order to eat it. So being that someone can eat it, even without meisering it, without taking off the meiser, without taking off the tithe, therefore, even though for you can't eat it, you can use the Erev Tchumen. Of a meiser rishon shnitla trumasei, or meiser rishon, the first tithing that its truma was taken off. Now this is talking about what seems to be a very basic case. We know that when we have our new grain, the first thing that we separate is the truma for the kohen. For what's left, we take a tenth from what's left and give it to the Levi. Now, the Levi has to take a tenth of his tenth and give it to a kohen. That's called trumas meiser. And he or anyone may not eat meiser rishon, that first tenth that he received, until he separates a tenth from it to give to the kohen. But the Mishnah is talking about a case where he did so. The meiser rishon, the first tenth, shnit l'trumasei, that its truma was taken. The Levi separated the truma from it, the truma from his meiser, the tenth of a tenth, and now he or anybody else can actually eat it.
He didn't have to actually give it to him, but he separated it.
Well, he has to give it to him too, but once he separates it, you can eat it. He has to give it to him. It's the Kohen's. Or the second tenth, which again, after you take the first tenth for the Levi, you separate a second tenth. That second tenth is sanctified. You got to eat Yerushalayim, or you got to redeem it onto money and take the money to Yerushalayim to eat. And the same thing, hekdesh. Hekdesh means, let's say I sanctify, I consecrate some grain to the Beis Hamikdash. So it cannot be eaten unless you redeem it, unless you transfer the sanctity onto money, and then the money is sanctified, and it goes to the Beis Hamikdash. So if you're using Meiser Sheni or consecrated grain, food, Sheniftu, that were redeemed, no problem. You can eat it. You can use Erev Tchumen. And Kohanim can make Erev Tchumen with Challah. Challah is the separation from a dough that goes to the Kohen. And Truma, that's the first separation from the grain that goes to the Kohen. They can use that, or as we learned previously, it's not only the Kohanim who can use Challah and Truma for the Erev Tchumen, anybody could. Because even if you, the Yisrael or the Levi, have Truma that you can eat, since the Kohen could eat it, it's considered food. The reason the Mishnah mentioned Kohanim using Challah and Truma is because typically they're going to be the ones using that for Erev Tchumen because they're the ones who have it. So we just gave a list of foods. Some of them were examples of things that you personally may not be able to eat. However, somebody could eat it, and therefore you can use it for your Erev Tchumen. And some of them even you can eat because they're perfectly fine. And therefore, one may wonder, what's the chiddush here? What's the point of at least in some of these examples, or again, based on what we know from the previous Mishnah, all of these foods are, at least to somebody, edible. We know that, are permitted to be eaten by somebody. So what's the chiddush here? What's the Mishnah listing all these things? It should be pretty simple. It should be elementary that you can use these things. So the answer is, and we're not going to go into it at length, is that this Mishnah, a Mishnah like this in this form that brings this whole list of these things we're about to talk about, you find it in a couple of places. In the first place you find it is in Brachas. And there's a whole discussion about what is the chiddush. Each case actually has some kind of a novelty to it. Each case is not a simple case of redeeming or it's not a simple case of it being okay. And therefore, the Mishnah really means to bring cases that are not so typical. There is a novelty to them to say that they are okay, and to say that therefore they can be used in our Mishnah, they can be used for an Erev Tchumen. The Mishnah continues, but you can't use tevel for Erev Tchumen. Tevel means produce that you did not take off everything you're supposed to. And until you take off everything that you're supposed to, it's forbidden. If it's forbidden to everyone, you can't use it for Erev Tchumen. Well, let's say the Levi has Meiser. He didn't separate the 10th from the 10th to give to the Kohen. It's forbidden for him or anyone to eat. Can't use it. Nor can you make an Erev Tchumen with Meiser Sheni, with the second Meiser, or consecrated food that was not redeemed. If it's not redeemed, nobody can eat it right now. And therefore, since nobody can eat it right now, the halacha is that you cannot use it for your Erev Tchumen. All right. So that's the first part of the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah goes into a new halacha. And that is that, again, Erev Tchumen means that before Shabbos, I go and put down food at the end of the Tchum, at the end of the boundary for Shabbos, and I establish my residence there. And then on Shabbos, I can go 2,000 cubits from there. Do you have to put it down yourself? Or can you send a shliach? Can you have an agent do it for you? And the answer is you can have an agent do it for you. But some people are a valid agent and some people aren't. If he sends his Erev, meaning he gives the following people the food to put down as his Erev Tchumen. He does it b'yad chayrish. A chayrish is a deaf mute. Okay? A shaita, they translate here as a deranged person. A katan is a minor. So let me read to you from the bottom. This is something we've come across many times. Let me read to you from the bottom how they explain this. A deaf mute, a person who can neither hear nor speak, is considered by the sages to be mentally incompetent because he lacks means of communication with other people. He is therefore grouped together with the deranged and minors as a person who is not legally responsible. A transaction or procedure that requires intent is invalid if done by any of these people because their intent is not legally effective. That's it is. Being that there is something missing in their mental competence. Therefore, they are not able. Their intent is not call it strong enough. Their intent is not qualified to be able to be able to perform a transaction. So therefore, if you're going to send your Erev Tchumen food with these people, or you send it in the hands of someone that doesn't believe in Erev. Yeah. You know, you have this Saduki, that Sadducee who's your neighbor, right? You're kind of on at least on peaceful terms. And you say to him, "Can you do me a favor? Could you take this food and put it down for me for an Erev Tchumen?" Now, this guy doesn't believe in that. Yeah. And he says, I don't believe, he doesn't believe in it, but he says, all right, since we're friends, I'll do it for you. But he doesn't believe in it. Okay? Eina Erev. It doesn't work. You know why it doesn't work? Because you can't believe him. Yeah. You can't believe him that he did it. If he doesn't believe in it, let me just read it here. The point here is, a heretic cannot be trusted to have this intent. Meaning, you can't even trust him when he puts it down, that he's really gonna, I'm making an Erev Tchumen. Yeah,
he's gonna,
he'll just either that or he's just gonna put it down. He doesn't take it serious. Yeah. He's not serious about it.
So the intent is
the intent is lacking.
You have to have some kavanah
knowledge.
You have to have intent. That's the whole way. The whole point here, as I explain around the bottom, is that an Erev Tchumen, being that you're establishing a residence when you put that food down, it needs intent for that. You're performing this is a like they call it a legal procedure. right? It's allowing you to be able to do something on Shabbos you couldn't do otherwise.
Right.
And it's a legal procedure in the sense that we consider it like you have established residence here.
Yeah.
Well, if that establishment of residence again has legal halakha consequences,
Yeah.
so that's a procedure, that's a legal procedure. You have to have intent. These people's intent are lacking. What they bring down is though, but let's say an Erev Chatzeris, right? Erev Chatzeris, where you send food, you send your bread, right? It all gets stored in one place. Can I send my bread for the Erev Chatzeris with my little kid? The answer is yes, because there's no intent when you give your Erev Chatzeris, right? There's no intent. You don't need intent for that. It's not like I give my Erev Chatzeris, I make my Erev Chatzeris. No, you bring your food and you get your food there. And then when the Erev Chatzeris is made, it's made. So therefore, it doesn't make a difference who you send it. You can even send it with your local tzeduki, your local apikaris. You can just send it with him because all you're doing is just bringing it there. Yeah. For Erev Chatzeris. Good point. Now, now let's say you told someone else to take it from him. Meaning, let's say you went ahead and you gave your Erev Tchumen food to your child, and you tell him, so and so is going to meet you, and you're going to give him the food, and you tell so and so, right, who is a perfectly good person to be able to do it, to be your agent for it, and you tell him that he should take the food from him and put it down for you. So therefore, we say, Erev, that's going to work.
You can trust.
You can do. Wait a second. You can do that. I could send it. Basically, I can send it with an unqualified person to give it to a qualified person to put the food down to make my Erev Tchumen. Now, as you just said, the person who now you contacted him, you told him to do it for you, right? You don't see him doing it, but you can trust him. That's a rule. If I go and I ask him to do something for me, I can assume that they did it, and I can rely on that. Okay, I can't rely on it if it's a tzeduki, right? Or it wouldn't even work. At the same time, how do I rely on any of these unqualified people to say that they actually gave it to the other person? I'm not there, or am I there? Like, what's the story? If I'm not there, right? I say to my little kid, you go and meet Ruvain over there, and he's going to take it from you, right? How do I know he actually did it if I'm not there? Can I trust the katan? Can I trust a cherish? Can I trust a shaita? Can I trust an apikaris? And the answer there, Bartanura brings down that the first stage, right, of the unqualified person giving it to the qualified person, you have to see that. Okay. You have to see that. If you don't see that, you have no way you don't have what to rely on that it was done.
You don't have any confirmation.
Right. However, once you see them give it to the qualified person, I don't have to see any further. Because once the person is qualified, we have a halach, we have a law. You ask somebody to do it, you can assume that they did it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, so thank you.